off to a grim start in year 2 as viewership craters. Damn. Unrivaled, the nascent 3-on-3 women's basketball league is off to a shaky start in its second year. The league, which has a slated goal of providing elite women's basketball players an alternative to...
So, those numbers you just heard aren't some kind of mistake. Unrivaled, the 3-on-3 league that was going to change everything for women's basketball, is watching viewers disappear at a terrifying pace. We're looking at a 75% collapse in certain time slots. Opening night brought in 1,775,000 viewers, but by the second weekend, down to 71,000. For a league with TNT backing and some of the most recognizable faces in women's basketball, these numbers are a disaster. But what makes this whole situation captivating goes way beyond just poor ratings. This is about 3 completely different ideas for where women's basketball should go, all crashing into each other. There's Unrivaled trying to keep players in America during the off months. There's this shadowy Project B making promises about worldwide tournaments and massive payouts. And there's the WNBA itself, now pushing the most dramatic expansion the league has ever attempted.
Aren't we? According to a report by Front Office Sports on Wednesday, Unrivaled's opening slate of games on January 5th averaged just 175,000 viewers across TNT and True TV. 2 additional games on opening day that only aired on True TV averaged 32,000 viewers. From there, the numbers have been...
Things definitely could have gone smoother. Let's break down what we're dealing with here. The best product on the court. That's what Unrivaled CEO Alex Bezel said to Front Office Sports when they asked about these awful ratings. At the same time, social media is packed with footage of Mist and Breeze going 1 for 26 from beyond the arc. Highlight reels of players tripping over each other, audio problems with microphones during live games. And remember, this is the second year. This was supposed to be when Unrivaled showed everyone the concept actually works. Instead, TGL is absolutely destroying them. That television golf league is pulling 3 to 4 times what Unrivaled get. Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy hitting golf balls in a studio is getting 4 times the viewers that Breanna Stewart and Ija Wilson get playing actual basketball. Just think about that for a second.
TNT, let's go to the part we all want to know. Quote, "We're building Unrivaled for the long game, and we're confident in our outlook, keeping in mind the same core principles and goals we set forth when establishing the league," Unrivaled CEO Alex Bezel told Front Office Sports. "We're proud of the product we're putting on the court each week and are going to continue growing our audience while showcasing the best women's basketball players in the world. Leagues..."
This is where the money side gets really ugly. Unrivaled locked in a 6-year media deal with TNT. But there's a way out built into the contract. TNT can walk away after 3 years if the league doesn't catch fire. We're in year 2, and it's not just failing to catch fire, it's actively burning out. And the timing is absolutely terrible. Warner Brothers Discovery, TNT's parent company, is right in the middle of getting sold off. Netflix and Paramount are both making moves to buy the whole thing. When fresh ownership takes over, they're going to examine every single asset and ask the most basic question there is this putting money in our pockets or taking it out?
Humorous, dare I say. The Breeze and the Mist, when it combined 1 for 26 from the 3-point line. I'm looking on Twitter and I'm seeing bloopers of these. They're still falling all over each other. We're still doing the mic and I don't know what's going on here.
Something most people miss about Netflix is this. They're obsessed with prestige content. They want shows and sports that get people talking and win awards. Even when the actual viewer numbers are nothing special, Unrivaled checks every box they care about. It's forward-thinking. It centers women. It has major stars involved. Netflix would definitely put this behind their subscription wall and market it as part of their sports push. But Paramount is slashing budgets left and right. They want to cut spending, not pick up passion projects that draw 70,000 people. If Paramount ends up winning the fight for Warner Brothers Discovery, Unrivaled is probably finished. That escape clause gets used, and all these players suddenly need to find somewhere else to spend their off-season.
Paramount will probably get Unrivaled the bleep out of here. I gotta be honest. Paramount would most likely get Unrivaled the bleep out of here. Netflix, on the other hand, they'd probably like a message like Unrivaled to be on their platform.
I'm keeping it real here. I'm keeping it real. So now we get to Project B. And this is where the story takes a really weird turn, because Project B might be the most questionable operation in professional sports right now. They announced some players back in December, then disappeared completely for weeks. Then, out of nowhere, they dropped their Tokyo tournament dates, March 26th through April 4th. No venue information, no broadcast details, no ticket sales, just dates on a calendar. The whole setup feels like a money-washing scheme pretending to be a sports league. Seriously, who announces when tournaments happen before they explain how they actually plan to run them? Who promises to pay IT athletes without showing they have the basic setup to host games?
Something tells me that Project B is not going to be getting the top players. Just, if there is a Project B, just something tells me the top, I don't know. It just reeks of scam to me. It reeks of, let me just wash some money off real quick. Just reeks of, let me just launder a couple, it just reeks to me. If it comes out and it's a real thing, I'll believe it. But as of right now, I'm taking everything Project B comes out with a grain of salt. Everything Project B announces, I'm taking with a grain of salt. So is it going to conflict with proposed start date? Yeah, I guess. Is there really going to be a Project B?
Let's say Project B is actually real for a minute. Let's pretend they really plan to run these tournaments and cut these checks. Even if that's true, they've created a huge problem for themselves. Those Tokyo dates they just announced, March 26th through April 4th, are going to crash right into the WNBA's new schedule plans. People familiar with the current contract cards say the WNBA wants to start training camp as early as mid-March. The league is looking to jump from 44 games to somewhere between 50 and 54 games, and when you want to add 10 games while also cutting down on back-to-back nights, the math is pretty straightforward. You need more calendar space. The season has to begin sooner and finish later. Right now, under the existing contract, training camp opened April 27th last season. That gave players who were playing internationally plenty of room to finish their overseas commitments and return to America. But start training camp in mid-March, and suddenly you have a scheduling nightmare.
Its Tokyo tournament stop will start March 26th and end April 4th. The 5-on-5 league is planning a global series of tournaments in Europe, Asia, and the Americas. It's likely that the Tokyo stop will be one of the league's last before players return to the WNBA. Let me say this, actually, as a side note. Let's say there is a Project B. Nothing would make me happier than the WNBA owner saying, oh yeah, you're in Project B. You can't come over here late. You can play in Project B, but you're going to be here for the start of the season.
This is exactly where WNBA owners need to draw a line in the sand. This is where they need to set some real boundaries and stop letting players control the entire schedule. Here's what needs to happen. If you decide to play in Project B, that's fine. That's your choice. But you don't get to walk into WNBA training camp 3 weeks behind everyone else because your Tokyo tournament went overtime. You wait. Just like every other international player has to wait before joining their team partway through the season. The WNBA already has a system for international players. If you're competing in Europe or Asia and your season extends past when the WNBA starts, you can catch up with your team later. But there are consequences. You miss games, you lose practice opportunities. You don't get special privileges just because you're famous.
Just saying. The league and WNBA Players Association are currently in a stalemate in discussions for a new collective bargaining agreement. The union is still waiting for a response to a proposal they submitted close to Christmas, according to sources familiar with negotiation. Whoa. The union is still waiting for a response to a proposal they submitted close to Christmas.
Let's break down what players are actually demanding in these contract negotiations, because this is where the gap becomes crystal clear. The WNBA Players Association sent in a proposal right before Christmas. They want a $10 million salary cap. They want roughly 30% of total league revenue. These are enormous jumps from what exists now. And look, I'm not arguing that players don't deserve bigger paychecks, but you can't ask for NBA-style money while also demanding the freedom to miss the first month of the season because you're playing in some side league that might be completely fake.
That proposal's loony. That proposal's not happening. Hey, maybe if I just don't answer this for long enough, maybe they'll just send something a little bit more serious. In that proposal, the players are seeking a $10.5 million salary cap and roughly 30% share of league gross revenue. According to a source familiar with negotiations, the WNBA is proposing an increase from 44 games between 50 to 54 games in the new CBA.
What makes the owner's complete silence so revealing is this. The players sent that proposal before Christmas. We're now deep into January, and according to people in the know, the league still hasn't said a word back. Complete radio silence. That's not because the owners are carefully building a thoughtful response. That's because the owners looked at that proposal and decided this isn't realistic. This is so far beyond what's possible that it doesn't even deserve an answer. It's like trying to sell a used car for $10,000 and someone offers you $200. You don't make a counteroffer. You just ignore them because they're not a serious buyer. The owners are waiting for the players to come back with something that makes sense, and the longer this stretches out, the more power shifts to the owners. Because the current contract expires soon, and players need a new agreement locked down before the season begins. So let's tie all these pieces together, because this is where everything gets truly interesting. You have Unrivaled falling apart. Because of horrible ratings and a possible ownership shakeup at Warner Brothers Discovery, you have Project B, which might not even be real, announcing tournament dates that crash into the WNBA's proposed schedule changes. And you have WNBA players asking for historic pay while simultaneously trying to keep their options open to compete in these other leagues. Something's gotta break. These three different plans for women's basketball's future can't all work at the same time. If the WNBA switches to a mid-March start with a 54-game season ending in November, that destroys the current international model. Players won't have enough time to spend 4 months playing in Europe or Asia and then return for WNBA training camp. The schedule just doesn't fit anymore. And if the WNBA is paying top players somewhere between $250,000 and $500,000 per season, suddenly the money reason to play internationally gets a lot weaker. You're not going to risk getting hurt in Turkey for an extra $100,000 when you're already earning $500,000 at home. That's the WNBA's strategy here. Make the season longer, bump up the paychecks, and make it financially ridiculous for players to focus on anything except the WNBA. It's a power grab dressed up as player-friendly expansion. But here's the issue. The players want everything. They want the extended WNBA season with bigger salaries, and they want the flexibility to compete in Unrivaled or Project B or anywhere else they feel like going. They want all the benefits with none of the trade-offs. And the owners are essentially saying, choose one. You can have a longer, more profitable WNBA season that requires your complete focus, or you can have a shorter WNBA season with smaller paychecks that leave space for these side projects. But you can't get both. Look what's happened with Unrivaled's viewership numbers. The league sold itself as elite women's basketball, but what we're seeing on the court has been messy. Players are obviously worn out. They're competing all year, with no rest, and you can see it affecting everything. The three-point shooting is terrible. Turnovers happen constantly. The intensity just isn't there. Now picture that same exhaustion bleeding into the WNBA season. Picture Breanna Stewart, or Aja Wilson, arriving at training camp in mid-March, after grinding through Unrivaled from January to early March, then trying to keep that performance level going through November. It can't be sustained. The human body needs recovery time. Elite athletes need an off-season to heal up, train properly, let injuries recover. But the financial pressure to compete year-round is so overwhelming that players are trading their long-term health for immediate money. And that's where the WNBA's plan gets really smart from a player health angle. If you extend the WNBA season and boost salaries dramatically, you eliminate that financial pressure. Players can actually afford to take the off-season off. They can rest up. They can recover properly. They can show up to training camp refreshed and ready to compete at their absolute peak. But that requires players to believe that the WNBA will actually deliver on these salary promises. And considering the league's track record of broken commitments and money problems, that trust isn't there yet. Which takes us back to that ignored proposal sitting in the owners' offices. The players requested 30% of gross revenue and a $10.5 million salary cap. The owners haven't responded, and time keeps moving. Here's what I think is really happening behind the scenes. The owners are waiting to see how the next media rights deal shakes out. The WNBA's current agreement with ESPN and CBS is about to expire, and the league is working on a new package that could be worth way more than what they currently get. If that new deal comes in strong, if the WNBA can lock down $200 million or $300 million per year from broadcast partners, then suddenly that 30% revenue share makes sense. The numbers add up. The owners can pay players what they're asking for and still turn a profit. But if the media rights deal is disappointing, if the WNBA can only manage a small bump over the current agreement, then the players' proposal is impossible. The money just doesn't exist to cover those salary demands. So the owners are playing the waiting game. They're letting the media rights talks finish before they commit to any specific pay structure. It's good business sense, but it's also incredibly frustrating for players who need to plan their financial futures. And this is where Unrivaled's meltdown becomes a serious problem for the players' negotiating power. One of the main arguments players have been using is that they have options. They can compete in Unrivaled, they can join Project B, they can play internationally. They don't need the WNBA more than the WNBA needs them. But if Unrivaled is down to 70,000 viewers and looking at cancellation after year 3, that argument crumbles. If Project B turns out to be a fraud that never actually holds a tournament, that argument crumbles. If international leagues start cutting their budgets because of economic problems, that argument crumbles. Suddenly, the WNBA becomes the only real option. And when you're the only game in town, you control everything. The owners understand this completely. They're watching Unrivaled's audience disappear. They're watching Project B's weird announcements with serious doubt. They're seeing international leagues struggle with money issues, and they're wondering, why should we hurry to give players everything they want when their backup plans are falling apart? This is tough negotiation tactics at their most brutal, and the players are losing their leverage every single day. So what comes next? Here's what I think happens. The WNBA reveals a new media rights agreement within the next 2 months. If that deal is solid, you'll see a new contract come together fast, with pay going up substantially. But the season will expand to 50-plus games with an earlier start time. Players will have to pick between the WNBA and these other leagues, and most will pick the WNBA, because the money will finally be worth it. But if the media rights deal is weak, we're looking at a serious labor fight. Players will refuse any contract that doesn't hit their salary targets. Owners will refuse to pay salaries that the revenue can't cover, and we might be looking at a delayed season start. Or even worse, either way, Unrivaled is probably finished after year 3. Those viewing numbers can't continue, and TNT is going to use that exit clause. Project B will either prove it's legitimate or disappear completely in the coming months, and the WNBA will come out as the only major player in women's basketball, for good or bad. The real question is whether the league will use that control to actually support its players, or whether it'll keep following the same old pattern of underpaying talent, while executives and owners keep the profits. Because if the WNBA finally eliminates all its competition and still won't pay players fairly, that shows you exactly what the league really cares about. So here's what I want to know from you. If you're a WNBA player right now, do you take a longer season with better pay, but no opportunity for other leagues? Or do you fight for a shorter season that gives you room to earn money elsewhere? Even if those other chances are vanishing because you can't do both, the schedule won't work. The human body can't handle it. Something has to change. Put your thoughts in the comments, and if you think I'm getting something wrong in this breakdown, tell me where I'm off base, because this situation is moving quickly, and what happens in the next few months is going to shape the future of women's professional basketball for the next 10 years. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you in the next one.